I handed my sister a check for $20,000 for her dream wedding. 2 weeks later, I found out I wasn't even invited. What I did next changed our family forever. Like a cash dispenser with a heartbeat, I'd become invisible, except when bills needed paying. After years of watching my loans transform into someone else's vacation, while my calls went unanswered, something inside me finally broke. The wedding betrayal was just the final straw. I meticulously gathered evidence of every financial manipulation, crafted my response. By the end of this video, you'll discover how I turned the tables on those who had been draining my bank account for years. It all started with a text message. "Hey, can I borrow $50 for groceries until payday? I'll pay you back Friday." My sister Sarah had just moved into her first apartment after college, and money was tight. Of course I said yes. It was just $50, and she was family. Friday came and went, without mention of the loan. I didn't bring it up. It seemed petty to remind her over such a small amount. 2 weeks later, another text. Car's making a weird noise. Mechanic wants $120 just to look at it. Can you help me out? I'll pay you back when I get my tax refund. Again, I transferred the money without hesitation. The request seemed reasonable. Cars break down, and unexpected expenses happen to everyone. Gradually, these small requests became a disturbing pattern. Sarah's tax refund came according to her social media celebration post, but my $120 never found its way back to my account. By month 3, my brother James called about his past due electricity bill. The $230 I sent was, in his words, just a temporary thing that he'd definitely pay back. I started noticing subtle shifts in language during these exchanges. The early request came with specific repayment dates until Friday, or when I get my tax refund. Later, these promises became vaguer soon, or when things settle down. Eventually, they disappeared altogether, replaced by effusive but empty gratitude. "You're a lifesaver," or "I don't know what I'd do without you." When my cousin Emma needed $75 for her son's school supplies, her text jolted me awake at 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. The bright screen illuminated my dark bedroom as I read her urgent plea insisting it couldn't wait until morning because she promised him she'd have everything ready for his first day. I was disoriented and half asleep. When I approved the transfer, my judgment clouded by the late hour and her seemingly desperate tone. These late-night financial emergencies became their own pattern. There's something particularly vulnerable about being awakened from sleep to hear a distressed family member. My defenses were lower, my critical thinking dulled by drowsiness, and they seemed to intuitively understand this advantage. 6 months into this new dynamic, I started testing the waters of accountability. At a family dinner when my aunt mentioned her upcoming weekend trip, I casually said, "Oh, that sounds fun. By the way, were you able to put something toward that $300 I lent you for your car insurance last month?" The table fell silent. My aunt's expression shifted from surprise to something harder before she laughed it off. "Oh, honey, I thought that was a gift. You know how tight things are with the divorce. I can't believe you'd bring that up here." Of all places, suddenly, I was the villain. The unspoken family rule had been established. Money flowed in one direction only. An acknowledgement of this flow was impolite. I tried a different approach with my brother, sending a gentle text. "Hey, just wondering if you could repay a bit of what I've lent you. Even $50 would help with my car payment this month." His response was a masterful guilt trip that left me apologizing to him, even though I'd been eating ramen for days to stretch my budget. That night, I added his name to a spreadsheet I reluctantly started, documenting loans that were looking increasingly like gifts. By the 9-month mark, my family had developed a remarkable ability to detect when my paycheck hit my account. Like clockwork, a financial emergency would materialize within 48 hours. I began noticing how their emergencies corresponded with their social media activities. The same day my brother claimed he couldn't afford utilities, he posted pictures of his new gaming headset. When confronted with these contradictions, they had ready explanations. Each seemed plausible in isolation, but the pattern was becoming unmistakable. Perhaps the most telling sign was how they behaved when they weren't asking for money. Calls grew infrequent unless a request was coming. Family gatherings were warm, right before a financial need was revealed, then distant after the money transferred. I remember the moment I fully recognized what was happening. I was reviewing my bank statements and realized I'd sent over $3,800 to family members in under a year, money I'd been saving for a down payment on my first home. Not a single dollar had been repaid. What made it difficult to recognize was how the exploitation was wrapped in the language of family loyalty and love. "We're family, we help each other," they'd say, though the helping only ever went in one direction. "I'd do the same for you," they'd insist, though the opportunity to prove this never materialized. I never expected that family loyalty would become their favorite disguise. But when 17 money transfer notifications lit up my phone in a single month, I was forced to see the truth behind the mask. That April marked the shift. No longer were these occasional requests for help. They had become a scheduled withdrawal service. The trajectory revealed itself, like a relentless tide rising against the shore. What began as 4 modest requests in January swelled to 7 in February, 11 in March, and finally crashed into April's stunning 17 demands. Each month's increase more alarming than the last. Yet somehow I remained blind to the pattern forming before my eyes. Their timing evolved into something mechanical. Sisters' texts arriving precisely on Monday morning. After my paycheck landed, my cousin's calls strategically placed every other Thursday. My brother's emergencies synchronized perfectly. With his rent due date, the language transformed. Most tellingly, my mom's messages evolved from "I hate to ask, sweetie, but could you possibly help with this unexpected bill?" to streamlined demands. "Need $200 for the electric by 3 p.m. Question marks disappeared, replaced by periods. Please vanished from their vocabulary, alongside any mention of repayment. During a family dinner, my cousin casually mentioned scheduling a dental procedure. When I asked about the cost, she locked eyes with me and said, "Don't worry about it. I've already factored you in." The table continued their conversation, while something in me went cold. I had become a line item in their financial planning without my consent. My aunt stopped saying thank you. After each transfer, she'd immediately pivot to future expenses. Got it. By the way, car insurance is due next month too. When I delayed sending money to my brother by a single day, his response was telling. "Thought you'd have sent it by now." I'm waiting, no gratitude, just impatient that I hadn't fulfilled my assigned role. Family members who had been too busy for weeks would suddenly become responsive when financial needs arose. Their messages would begin with a quick personal question before pivoting to their financial need. "How's the new job? Listen, I'm in a bind with this bill." The personal connection merely served as pretext. Holiday gatherings transformed into financial summits. At Easter brunch, my uncle announced, "Let's talk about the family vacation. We're thinking Myrtle Beach in July." He turned to me and added, "We'll figure out the total and let you know your portion." I realized my portion meant what I'd be contributing to everyone's trip. When questioned privately, he seemed genuinely confused. "But you always help out. That's your thing." The physical responses evolved too. Early gratitude gave way to a thumbs up emoji if I was lucky, sometimes just a period, as if to say, "Received, conversation over." My value had been distilled to my bank account. My brother began showcasing future purchases during family gathering. "Check out these golf clubs I'm getting next month," he'd say, despite owing me hundreds already. When confronted, his response was practiced. That's different. That's family stuff. This is something I need. Phone calls became financial assessments, inevitably turning to detailed breakdown of everyone's expenses without mention of repayment. At my nephew's birthday, I overheard my sister telling a friend, "Don't worry about the deposit for the beach house. My sister always comes through." She hadn't consulted me. When confronted, she seemed surprised. "But you have that good job," as if my employment was a family resource. My worst discovery came through an accidentally included email. My brother had left me on a family thread discussing how to approach me for money. "Don't mention the concert tickets," my aunt advised. "Just stick to the car story. She always says yes when it's about getting to work." They had developed extraction strategies, knowing exactly which buttons guaranteed results. The family group, chat once filled with genuine connection, had become a coordinated effort to prime me for financial requests. Someone would mention hardship, others would express sympathy, and the actual request would follow in private. They were workshopping their approaches collectively. I had become the designated provider without my consent. The warning signs surrounded me, the vanishing gratitude, the shift from requests to expectations, the absence of repayment discussions, the strategic timing of emergencies, and the planning of their finance, with my wallet as an assumed extension of their own. My success wasn't a personal victory, but a family ATM dispensing funds on demand. Those warning signs weren't just pointing to exploitation. They were signaling a calculated system where my financial sacrifices directly funded their lifestyle upgrades. My family had mastered the art of turning emergencies into opportunities, and I was about to discover just how far they'd taken it. The first revelation came on a Tuesday night. My brother James called me sobbing. His voice cracked as he explained that his landlord had given him 3 days to pay his overdue rent or face eviction. "I don't have anywhere to go," he choked out between sobs. "I've been looking for extra shifts, but nothing's come through." The desperation in his voice was palpable, and I immediately transferred $1,200 to cover his rent and late fees. 3 days later, while scrolling through Instagram, I froze. There was James, proudly showcasing his brand new gaming set, complete with a high-end chair, RGB lighting, and a top-tier graphics card. The caption read, "Finally upgraded my battle station. Treat yourself." The timestamp showed he'd ordered the equipment the same night I'd sent him the emergency eviction money. The price tag? Roughly $1,200. My stomach dropped. The world seemed to tilt sideways. All those tears, that trembling voice, a performance, a calculated act to fund a gaming setup he'd likely been eyeing for months. When I confronted him, his response shocked me even more. "What's the big deal? I did need the rent money. I just decided to prioritize differently once I had cash." The casual dismissal stung worse than the original lie. He genuinely didn't see anything wrong with using my financial support to free up his own money for luxury. This awakening continued with my sister Sarah. Her desperate plea for help with a sudden medical bill coincided with her weekend trip to New York City. The $600 I'd sent for her unexpected root canal transformed into Broadway tickets and rooftop cocktails meticulously documented on social media. Similarly, my cousin Emma's car repair emergency requiring $1,800 occurred the same week. She unveiled her professional-grade kitchen renovation. When I mentioned the timing, she deflected. "Are you monitoring how I spend my money now?" That's really toxic behavior. The conversation quickly turned to how I was being controlling. In another instance, my aunt called in tears about falling behind on medical payments after insurance denied coverage. I sent $2,400 that same day. Less than 2 weeks later, my heart sank as I saw her photos from an all-inclusive resort in Cancun. When confronted, she expertly reframed. After all that stress with medical bills, my doctor actually recommended I take a vacation for my blood pressure. Family health comes first, don't you think? I began documenting these patterns, saving. Screenshots of tearful requests alongside subsequent luxury purchases. The evidence was surreal. My mother's essential car repairs of $1,900 became a designer purse. My brother's final notice, electric bill funded, his Atlantic City gambling trip. My sister's past due tuition payment coincided with new phone and laptop purchases. This wasn't occasional opportunism. It was systematic exploitation. They had developed a sophisticated understanding of which emergencies would trigger my immediate financial response. Medical issues, eviction threats, and utility shut-offs bypassed any questions on my part. When I addressed these inconsistencies, I encountered calculated deflection. So you're keeping score now? I thought family helped family. It's not like you can't afford it. You're doing so well compared to us. After everything our family has done for you growing up, you're going to nickel and dime us? These confrontations never resulted in acknowledgement or apology. Instead, they reinforced a narrative where I was the problem, either for noticing the deception or questioning it. Meanwhile, my financial situation deteriorated. I had depleted my emergency savings, postponed dental work, continued driving a failing car, and cancelled vacation plans. I lived in a studio apartment with curb-found furniture while funding my family's lifestyle upgrades. The financial reality was staggering. Over 3 years, I had transferred more than $45,000 to family members, my potential house down payment or business capital gone. The exploitation accelerated alarmingly. $8,000 the first year, $14,000 the second, and $23,000 the third. The breaking point came when I discovered a group text I wasn't meant to see. My family was discussing strategies for approaching me about funding a vacation. Don't mention it's all-inclusive, my brother wrote. Just focus on how it might be the last trip with grandma, given her health. My mother added, frame it as contributing rather than covering it. She responds better to that language. Reading their calculated approach, complete with psychological triggers and specific language choices, was like being doused with ice water. This wasn't family. This was a sophisticated scam operation, with me as the designated mark. Beyond, the financial ledger showing $45,000 drained from my accounts was an invisible emotional debt they'd forced me to carry, one where my worth was measured only by my willingness to sacrifice, while they weaponized my love against me. I stared at the ceiling at 3 a.m., my heart racing as if I'd committed some terrible crime. Earlier that day, I had told my cousin I couldn't contribute $800 toward her family vacation to Disney World. For the first time in years, I had finally said, no! And my body was physically rebelling against my decision. You're being incredibly selfish right now, she had texted back. We've already told the kids you're helping. They'll be devastated. The guilt crashed over me in waves, even though I knew her manipulation tactics were textbook. She had deliberately told her children I was funding their trip before confirming with me, creating emotional hostages I couldn't disappoint. This was far from an isolated incident. My family had perfected an arsenal of emotional manipulation techniques. My brother used the conditional love approach. If you really cared about me, you wouldn't hesitate to help. My mother invoked family obligation. After everything I've sacrificed for you, this is how you repay me. These calculated triggers bypassed my rational thinking. My therapist later explained this as emotional blackmail, using fear, obligation, and guilt to control another person's behavior. The pattern was consistent. Request money. Apply pressure. If I hesitated, punish with cold treatment if I refused. Reward with affection when I complied. They had conditioned me to associate financial compliance with family acceptance. When I showed reluctance, Family members immediately enlisted others as reinforcements. After declining to fund my sister's car down payment, I received 5 separate calls within 2 hours from multiple relatives, including my elderly grandmother, who had been told I was abandoning the family in a time of need. This coordinated pressure made me question my own judgment. The toll on my health manifested in alarming ways. Insomnia gripped me 3 nights weekly, leaving me hollow-eyed and sluggish. Stress-induced migraines pulsed behind my eyes, often lasting for days. A constant knot twisted in my stomach. Whenever my phone rang, my heart would pound audibly in my ears at specific text notification sounds. My blood pressure rose 15 points in 6 months. My hair thinned noticeably, falling out in clumps in the shower. I developed persistent digestive issues that 3 different doctors attributed to anxiety. The week after sending $4,500 for my aunt's supposed medical procedure, I developed shingles, my immune system compromised by constant stress. I isolated myself from concerned friends. When my college roommate pointed out that my family only contacted me when they needed money, I stopped mentioning them entirely. When my coworker questioned why I was skipping lunch while sending my cousin money for her car payment, I made excuses to eat alone. The people trying to protect me became the ones I avoided, creating an echo chamber where only my family's voice remained. The language they used was particularly insidious. Every reasonable financial boundary I attempted to establish was reframed as a moral failing, evidence that I was cold, unfeeling, and didn't value family. When I suggested alternatives to giving money, I was accused of turning my back on family. When I asked for repayment plan, I was treating them like strangers. The most damaging aspect was how this dynamic rewired my sense of self-worth. I began measuring my value by my financial utility. Conversations where no one asked for money left me confused, waiting for the request to emerge. I found myself preemptively offering financial help just to maintain control. At family gatherings, I calculated my admission price before arriving, knowing some financial request would inevitably surface before dessert. My breaking point came during therapy. 6 weeks after that sleepless night, my therapist asked me to list 5 times family members had supported me emotionally in the past year without any financial component. I sat staring at the blank page for 10 full minutes before breaking down in tears. I couldn't think of a single instance. That moment crystallized everything. What I had been experiencing wasn't normal family interdependence. It was systematic exploitation. When I was financially generous, I received warmth and inclusion. When I set boundaries, I faced hostility and rejection. My role wasn't daughter, sister, or cousin. It was family bank, and any deviation from that role was swiftly punished. This wasn't about money. It was psychological manipulation that had fundamentally altered my nervous system. I had become a prisoner in an invisible cell, where the bars were made of guilt and the locks were forged from obligation. While I documented countless small betrayals in my journal, I never imagined they were merely rehearsals for something unthinkable. The notification from Facebook showed my sister in a wedding dress I had unknowingly paid for, surrounded by every family member except the one who funded the entire celebration. 8 months earlier, Sarah had called me in tears. After 5 years with her fiancé, they'd finally set a wedding date, but their venue deposit was due immediately to secure their dream location. The $5,000 they needed wasn't available in their savings. I'd never ask if it wasn't the most important day of my life, she said, her voice cracking with emotion. We'll pay you back from our wedding gifts. I hesitated, only briefly. Despite everything I documented, this was different. A once-in-a-lifetime milestone for my sister. I wanted to be the supportive family member wished others would be for me. I transferred the money that evening feeling a rare moment of genuine connection when she called to express her gratitude. "You've saved our wedding," she said. I'll never forget this. That first request opened a floodgate. Over the following 6 months, various emergencies and final expenses appeared with alarming regularity. The venue had increased costs. The caterer required larger deposits. The photographer would be unavailable unless booked immediately. Then came dress alterations, honeymoon deposits, and unexpected venue fees. Each time, I felt that familiar twist in my stomach. The physical response my body had developed to these requests. Yet each time, I convinced myself this situation was different. This was her wedding day, not another frivolous purchase. I wanted her day to be perfect, even as my doubts multiplied. By the time the wedding month arrived, I had contributed just over $20,000 to Sarah's wedding. Though no formal invitation had arrived, I assumed it was an oversight amid the chaos of wedding planning. When I casually asked about the final detail during a family dinner, Sarah seemed oddly evasive, mentioning something about keeping it intimate and space constraints at the venue. I dismissed my unease and bought a new dress, scheduled time off work, and arranged for a hotel room near the venue for the weekend, believed the wedding was taking place. Then came that Tuesday afternoon, scrolling through Facebook during my lunch break. I froze. A photo album titled "Sarah and Mike's Wedding Day" appeared on my screen. Posted 3 days earlier, the timestamp showed Sunday, not the Saturday I'd been told. The venue wasn't the lakeside garden I'd been described, but an elegant ballroom I'd never seen. My screen filled with images of my entire family, parents, cousins, aunts, uncles, even distant relatives I barely knew, all dressed in formal attire, smiling together in group photos. In one particularly painful image, my mother stood beside Sarah, helping adjust her veil, the veil I had paid for. I scrolled through 67 photos. Not a single one showed an empty seat that might have been reserved for me. There was no place card with my name, no mention of my absence. I hadn't just been uninvited, I had been erased. My first instinct was to assume a horrible mistake. I called Sarah immediately, but she didn't answer. I texted our mother, trying to sound casual. "Just saw Sarah's wedding photo. Beautiful. Was there a date change I missed?" The response came hours later. "We didn't think you'd want to come. You're always so busy with work." I sat with that message for a long time, reading it repeatedly as something cold and clarifying settled in my chest. This wasn't a misunderstanding or an oversight. This was deliberate. They had taken my money, while simultaneously deciding he wasn't worth including in the celebration it funded. Previous financial exploitation should always maintained at least a veneer of family connection. This was different. The wedding exclusion stripped away all pretense. I was not family. I was an ATM. That night, I printed out every transfer receipt related to Sarah's wedding. I calculated what those funds could have meant for my own life. Half a down payment on a house, 2 years of retirement contribution, the graduate degree. I'd been postponed. The realization came with unexpected clarity. I wasn't angry anymore. I felt something much more powerful, a cold, firm resolve. For years, I had been the victim in a story I hadn't recognized. Now I saw the complete narrative, and with that knowledge came determination. I called my therapist that evening and scheduled an emergency session. "This isn't about the money," I told her. "It's about recognizing that I've been systematically manipulated by the people who should care about me most." "What do you want to do with this realization?" she asked. "I want to take back control. I want to stop the cycle." That document became my battle plan. But what transformed me from victim to victor wasn't just the money. Trail. It was the hidden patterns that emerged when I viewed 3 years of manipulation as single, calculated operation instead of isolated family emergency. I became obsessed with documentation. Each night after work, I'd sit at my kitchen table, surrounded by bank statements, screenshots, and journals, piecing together a financial crime scene where I was both the investigator and the victim. I was reconstructing the architecture of deception that had been built around me. My investigative process began methodically. I downloaded 3 years of bank statements and highlighted every transfer to family member in bright yellow. Those highlights created a visual rhythm across the pages, clusters around holidays, paydays, and suspiciously, the exact timing of luxury purchases I'd later discover on social media. In my spreadsheet, I categorized each transaction by family member, stated purpose, actual use, and whether any acknowledgement had been expressed. The evidence expanded to digital communications. One text from my brother read, "Need $800 for rent ASAP, or I'll be evicted." Yet just hours later, he posted photos of his new gaming setup. My cousin's car emergency transformed into kitchen renovation photos within days. Reading these side by side felt like decoding a secret language my family had been speaking around me. What proved most damning were the timestamps. By cross-referencing my transfers with family members' purchase posts, I discovered an average gap of just 6.4 hours between emergencies and luxury purchases. This wasn't occasional behavior. It was systematic exploitation with a predictable pattern. I began recording our phone conversation, legal in my state, with one-party consent. These recordings revealed shocking manipulation tactics. Your father would have wanted you to help the family. And if you can't help with this small thing, what kind of sister are you? The emotional blackmail became clearer when isolated from the moment and replayed later. The most revealing evidence came accidentally, when my mother inadvertently added, "Meet a group chat meant for planning financial requests. She just got her. Bonus this month, who needs something first?" Read one message. Another stated, "Wait until Tuesday to ask. She'll have her guard down after the weekend." Reading those messages was like finding the script to a play, where I was the only one who didn't know my role. I consulted a financial advisor who specialized in financial abuse cases. "This is systematic financial exploitation," she confirmed. After reviewing my evidence, she calculated the true cost, the $45,000 directly transferred plus lost investment growth and compound interest, exceeding $78,000 over 3 years. A family law attorney reviewed my documentation and confirmed that, while I had given the money willingly technically, there were elements of fraud that could potentially support small claims cases. Having this option gave me power I hadn't felt in years. The emotional toll of this evidence gathering was immense. Each bank statement felt like reading another chapter in a dossier of betrayal. My therapist suggested approaching the task clinically, like a detective working a case rather than a victim reliving trauma. This mental framing helped separate the pain from the analytical work. From my investigation emerged comprehensive portrait of exploitation. I identified 6 manipulation tactics, family used repeatedly, each like a lock-in and escape room. I was finally learning to pick manufactured emergencies created artificial urgency. Strategic timing of requests caught me at vulnerable moments. Emotional blackmail, leveraged family loyalty, future faking made promises never kept. Gratitude bombing quickly escalated to new demands. And when I resisted, coordinated pressure campaign followed. I created pattern profiles for each family member. My sister always began with flattery before mentioning a crisis involving her children. My brother relied on artificial deadlines. My mother specialized in family obligation, guilt. These patterns, once identified, became predictable and defeatable. The most powerful evidence came from tracking silence. During periods when I mentioned my own financial constraints, family communication dropped by 78%. When I announced a bonus, contact increased. by 64% within 24 hours. The data confirmed what my heart knew. I was valued for my wallet, not my presence. After 2 months, I compiled everything into a document titled Financial Exploitation Analysis, containing 117 pages of evidence, patterns, and financial impact. I created 3 copies, one for my records, one for my safety deposit box, and one for when I finally confronted my family. The evidence revealed a deeper truth. This wasn't about money. It was about power, control, and my family's view of me as a resource rather than a person. The $78,000 lost was merely the quantifiable aspect of exploitation. The real theft was of my agency, boundaries, and self-worth. The realization that I was viewed as a resource rather than a person ignited something unexpected. A cold, calculated precision I never knew I possessed. Armed with 117 pages of documented betrayal, I was preparing to show them exactly who they'd been stealing from all along. My first step was securing my own financial foundation. I opened a new checking account at a different bank, one that no family member knew about. This became my primary account, with direct deposits rerouted there immediately. I left just enough in my original account to avoid suspicious changes while I prepared. Then I froze my credit, changed all my financial passwords, and removed stored payment information from my devices. No more accidental thumb approval of Venmo requests at 2 a.m. Each family member had developed their own specialized extraction technique. Sarah, with her carefully timed Sunday night emergency. James with his rent-to-luxury pipeline. My mother with her increasingly terse demands. My preparation became equally personalized. I created receipt portfolios for each of them. For Sarah, I compiled a timeline connecting her emergencies with her social media posts, revealing the suspicious gap between receiving funds and making purchases. For James, I assembled screenshots of his gaming setup, purchases alongside his desperate pleas for rent money. For my mother, I created a graph showing how her requests had evolved, from paragraph-long explanation to 3-word demands. The hardest part was anticipating their reaction. I role-played potential scenarios with my therapist, practicing responses to the inevitable guilt trips when she mimicked my mother's. What about when I raised you? I practiced staying calm. Your past care doesn't obligate me. To financial exploitation now, for James's likely anger, I rehearsed. Setting boundaries isn't selfishness. For Sarah's probable tears, I prepared. I'm addressing actions, not questioning love. I chose the upcoming family dinner as my moment, after my next paycheck, but before the predictable wave of requests would start. This gave me control over the environment while ensuring everyone would be present. My financial boundary document was a declaration, not a negotiation. No loans without formal agreements. No emergency transfers without verification. Maximum $200 per year per person, after previous repayment. Consequences for manipulation. Attempts. Beyond the $45,000 directly transferred, I calculated the actual impact exceeded $78,000 when considering lost investment growth, delayed education, and postponed home ownership. These weren't hurtful betrayals anymore. They were data points in a pattern of exploitation. I studied their manipulation tactics, like a scientist examining specimens, manufactured emergencies, strategic timing, emotional, blackmail, future faking, gratitude, bombing followed by rapid escalation, and coordinated pressure campaigns. Understanding their playbook neutralized its power. The week before confrontation, I tested my resolve. When James called with his predictable rent emergency, I simply replied, "I can't help this month." The subsequent barrage, multiple calls, texts from my mother about abandoning him, and a group chat discussion about my sudden change confirmed everything. Their coordinated response to a simple boundary revealed the extent of their entitlement. I developed contingency plans. I researched gray-rocking techniques for deflecting emotional manipulation. I prepared phrases to recognize manipulation. Attempts, that's emotional blackmail, or you're attempting to use guilt instead of addressing the issue. I saved key contact information in case I needed immediate support. The most difficult preparation was accepting possible outcome. Some relationships might not survive. My therapist helped me work through this grief in advance, acknowledging that relationships contingent, financial exploitation, weren't truly relationships at all. I secured my living situation, ensuring no family member had keys to my apartment or access to my workplace. I temporarily deactivated social media accounts to prevent monitoring of my activities. I even prepared a script for unexpected visits. I'm not available for unscheduled discussions about money. I've made my position clear. The night before our dinner, I transferred the remaining balance from my old checking account to the new one, leaving exactly $233.18, the average amount they'd repaid from over $45,000 borrowed. The symbolism wasn't accidental. I'd established connections with a financial abuse support group, scheduled additional therapy sessions, and arranged time off work to process whatever emotional aftermath emerged. Preparation was about surviving the aftermath, with my resolve intact. As I packed the folders into my bag that morning, I realized I wasn't nervous anymore. The power dynamic had already shifted, though they didn't know it yet. For 3 years, they'd been playing a game with me, where I didn't know the rules. Now I was bringing my own game board, my own piece, and most importantly, my own victory condition. Option 3 best fits this section's content. The moment between sitting down at that table and revealing my folder contained the last seconds of our old relationship, a final breath before everything changed. I arrived early to Thanksgiving dinner, a strategic decision that allowed me to witness everyone's entrance. My mother bustled in, first immediately delegating tasks without a hello. Then came my brother James, his eyes barely meeting mine, before asking where. The beer was Sarah, arrived with her husband. The wedding ring I'd inadvertently funded catching the light. The dining room gradually filled with the very people who had collectively drained nearly $80,000 from my life. The table settings looked immaculate, as they always did at holiday gatherings. I funded the turkey I'd paid for, the matching napkins I'd purchased last Christmas, even the wine that my cousin Emma was liberally pouring, all financial threads connecting back to me. Today, that invisible web would become painfully visible. My heart beat steadily as I waited for the perfect moment. It came when my aunt asked if I could help out with her January cruise deposit right before the blessing. The room's warm golden light seemed to spotlight her request. Actually, I said, my voice remarkably steady, I've brought something for everyone today. The clinking of silverware ceased abruptly. I reached into my bag, feeling the weight of months of preparation steadying my hand. One by one, I produced the individualized folders, blue for James, sliding it across the polished wood, red for Sarah, watching her expression shift as it approached, green for my mother, her fingers tensing as she reached for it. What's this? My mother asked, her tone already defensive. It's our financial relationship, I replied simply. Every transaction, every promise, every pattern of behavior. I thought Thanksgiving was the perfect time to express my gratitude for what this has taught me. For 43 seconds, I counted. No one spoke. Only the sound of pages turning filled the room as they examined their own words, requests, and broken promises rendered in black and white. The temperature seemed to drop with each passing second. Brother broke first, his face flushing as he discovered the screenshot of his gaming setup purchased hours after his emergency eviction. This is ridiculous, he sputtered. You're keeping score? That's not what family does. Family also doesn't systematically exploit each other, I countered, my practiced calm holding. Page 12 shows your pattern. 17 money requests in the past year, always within 2 days of my paycheck deposits. Sarah's shock morphed into indignation until she reached the wedding section, her eyes widening at the highlighted $20,000 total and Facebook screenshots, showing the celebration I'd funded but wasn't invited to attend. This is how you ambush. US, during Thanksgiving. My mother's voice rose sharply, cutting through the murmurs. After everything we've done for you. Page 27 in your folder, I directed her. It shows that exact phrase appearing in your texts, requesting money, always followed by a specific dollar amount, never actual emotional support. The room erupted. My aunt began crying about misunderstood intention. My cousin tore pages from his folder. My mother's eyes darted around, searching desperately for allies. Through it all, I felt oddly detached, protected by the psychological buffer me months of preparation had created. When the outburst subsided, I continued. The final page contains my boundaries moving forward. I paused, letting the tension build. I've opened a new account. The old account you all know now contains exactly $233.18, the total amount you've collectively repaid out of the $45,000 borrowed. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Shadows lengthened across the table as afternoon light faded. So you're cutting us off? Just like that, my brother laughed incredulously. I'm establishing boundaries, I corrected. Anyone wanting to rebuild our relationship can start by acknowledging these patterns and discussing a reasonable repayment plan. What followed revealed everything. Not one family member expressed genuine remorse. Instead, they offered only denial and counter-accusations. My mother claimed I was mentally unwell. Sarah suggested I needed therapy for my obsession with money. I thought at least one of you would apologize, I said quietly. That tells me everything I need to know. By dessert, the atmosphere had shifted from hostility to calculation. Suddenly, my mother wanted to talk after the holidays. My brother remembered he had some money set aside. In the driveway, my sister caught up with me. You know this changes everything between us, she said, her voice both angry and uncertain. It already changed 3 years ago, I replied. Today is just the first time we're both acknowledging it. It's been 14 months since that Thanksgiving confrontation. I won't pretend the aftermath was easy. My phone stayed silent for weeks afterward. Some relationships dissolved completely, but something unexpected emerged from the wreckage. My cousin Emma repaid her entire debt over 6 months. We meet monthly for coffee now. The financial freedom has transformed my life. I've eliminated credit card debt, started therapy, and enrolled in that graduate program I'd postponed. I've learned that real family lifts you up rather than drains you dry. Like breaking free from invisible chains, I'm finally standing in my own light.